He is a visionary leader, a philanthropist. He's dedicated to fostering more equity and inclusion within this world. He is currently a senior manager of culture as well as engagement at ServiceNow. I stepped back and I asked him a little bit. I was like, what is ServiceNow? And he was like, Sean, let me show you. And when he showed me exactly how big ServiceNow is, of course, I'm thinking, oh, that's just some small company. It is actually a huge company. Right now, he's been spearheading the HBCU partnership and community outreach initiatives. His effort has helped ServiceNow donate $1 million to Benedict College, an HBCU in South Carolina. Amongst some of his professional endeavors, of course, has been where he's actually been recognized by the Washington Post for delivering over 1 million pounds of food to distressed communities during the pandemic. Also, he's actually, on a personal level, has actually tutored and mentored over 200 student athletes, helping them to secure over 35 million in scholarships, and is the author of the book Beyond the Field, An Athlete's Guide to Greatness. He is actually from Florida. Again, which is, we're not going to hold that against him. Again, by far, I spent a lot of time in Florida as well. He actually had an opportunity to play ball and attended the University of Alabama. And again, overall, just a really cool guy. I had a chance to meet him probably about just a few weeks ago, was thoroughly impressed. And I said to myself, you know what, we need, individuals who have come up and have a story to tell. So I've asked him to join us today to tell that story, along with some of the realities of how companies of his size are navigating through this, through diversity, through inclusion, so that we can kind of get a feel for how some of the huge guys are doing it, and then how that can reflect on how our individual businesses can do it as well as over just an industry. So Chris, thank you so much for joining us today. And the floor is yours. If you could, start any way that you want to, please.
Good afternoon, good morning, depending on parts of the world you're in. Thanks for having me. Man, I don't know, it's when people read your bio or whatever you want to call it, kind of sit back like, wow, right? That person sounds amazing. I mean, like, I don't know, Rick. I always wonder when I was young, I was like, man, that person sounds amazing. It's so much to start from, but first of all, I just want to say thank you everybody for taking the time to join and listen today. Where do I want to begin? Background, history, what got you here? I think for me, I kind of start, right? Like, I don't want to bore y'all with my childhood, but I think for me, what I symbolize and stand for at a company like ServiceNow, these are my independent thoughts. I don't represent ServiceNow, I represent myself first. So I want to say that. But when you talk about somebody being a first generation kid, right? Like, a lot of people hear and see, but when you get in corporate America, I don't know where we go. I can't find this. and it's a struggle. So like for me, I want to create a pathway, right? Whether you black, purple, white, you love who you love. I'm like, how do we create opportunities where you belong in corporate America? So like, that's been one of my calling cards since I've been at ServiceNow for 3 years. But it all started back when I was a kid. My grandma was a maid, right? She worked for this rich doctor. We took their clothes as hand-me-down, but we treat them like they was new, right? So I'm that person who really believe in cherishing what you have and making the most of what you have. And to have this platform to work for a company such as ServiceNow, $100 billion company, and you like, how do we make an impact, right? Everybody look at things from a micro, like, oh, do we go region? Do we go base? And I'm like, hey, let's just make it simple. Let's start one person at a time, right? So for me, HBCU, after George Floyd died, a lot of companies trying to figure out how do we invest, do all this other kind of stuff. And what we came up with was like, hey, we don't want to go to the Howards, the Morehouse of the world. We want to go to a school like Benedict College, who most people may not have heard of, but the people are hungry. They just want an opportunity. And that partnership with Benedict College have been like plentiful, because the students we got from there have been amazing. The administration have been amazing. and we have so far hired 10 students. And I know some people say 10 may not be a lot, but when you look at tech, it's so hard to get a minority through the door to prep, coding. And I was on the engineering side of the house, so talking about getting coders and students of minorities opportunities is just hard to do, right? So we've been doing that, and then we didn't just want to throw money at the problem. We wanted to create solutions. So we had our team have engineers build a curriculum in a boot camp to upskill, right? Upskill, because my thing is let's meet people where they are. We can think of 100 reasons why people may not, in tech, everybody talk about ramp up. How do we ramp up, right? We don't want to hire them. We don't want to hold their hand. I'm like, you're not holding nobody's hand. They just need an opportunity, right? So that's why I think we've been able to make tremendous impact at ServiceNow, because we're not saying, hey, let's meet you where you are. Let's create an opportunity. And then these students have come in and like done amazing things. So that's that one side of it. But I'll pause and because I don't want to be long-winded.
No, Chris, no, and thank you so much for some of the background there. I mean, it's clear that based off of somewhat humble beginnings, it's kind of set the tone. Seems like your grandmother, and your family, were a big push for you as a young man. My question to you here, and I have several of them, but right now, how did you choose this career path?
This career path chose me. I tried to run from it. It wasn't like when I graduated. I mean, I won a national championship at the University of Alabama. I'm like most kids from the inner city, their goal is to go to the NFL. I was no different. Like, I was a top recruit coming out of Florida. I definitely thought I was going to the NFL, and that didn't happen. And as I'm going through this process, we won a national championship at Alabama. I'm in grad school. I'm like, what happened to the players who don't make the NFL? What is the university doing to ensure that we are successful? And of course, they all say, oh, we got this program, your degree. And I'm like, that ain't good enough. So like over 12, 13 years ago, I started on this DEI journey before it was DEI. And that's really kind of spearheaded me to kind of like look at all the things that, because most people say when they look at a young athlete, they say, how are these athletes making dumb decisions? Nobody teaching them financial literacy. Nobody teaches this kid how to speak in front of a camera. And I'm like, if you only knew the half of us, there's no interview prep. You don't get the skills that most people think. So then that's why my organization started doing, prepping young athletes how to interview in front of the camera, talking to them about financial literacy, interest rate, credit scores. And then also I don't want to jump over this fact. I took an apprenticeship when I was in grad school called 𝗀𝗲𝗁𝗀𝗀. And when I took this job, it was so eye-opening. Like, my job was to go, if you ever been to a stadium, Alabama has 100,000 people coming to their games, but like they sell signage, they sell advertisement, programming, and all the other kind of stuff. But like, I was in there and I would go with the reps and they'd be like, just for a 30-second spiral, they're gonna cost you $50,000 at a game, right? You're like, what? So like, I was seeing all this happen in grad school, and I was like, man, nobody even told me there was a career. There was so many things that I was just like lost about, and I was just got interest. And then I went from there, 𝗀𝗲𝗁𝗀𝗀 Sports Marketing, closing deals, went to IMG, went to Under Armour Sports Marketing, signed guys like Julio Jones, worked with Ray Lewis, Cam Newton. So like, but even working with those guys, I still saw was a gap in giving back to the community. Like, how do they give back to the community, right? How do they use their platform? But then also, how do they brand themselves and leverage themselves? So been doing this work for a long time. And then fast forwarding, tracking, pandemic happened. Just like everybody else, we received some funding from PPP loans from the government. And what I decided to do is like, hey, this is the time our organization need to be in the community. And then we went across the country and gave away 1 million pounds of food, worked with the 49ers, the Baltimore Ravens, the Washington Commanders, and also like University of Alabama and things of that nature. So I'm one of those people, I believe in my passion, right? Led me to one, having an opportunity at ServiceNow and at Microsoft on the heels of George Floyd, right? So couple pandemic, couple George Floyd, couple DEI become a hot buzzword. Now I get a job that like nobody was necessarily looking for or like groomed for. It just happened, right? So, and then as I took the job, I said, hey, I don't want to take a job to be a figurehead. I want to take the job to make impact. So if me coming to your company just to check the box, I'm not that person. But if you guys really want to make impact, and I landed at ServiceNow.
So Chris, and that's a great point. So as far as making an impact, you clearly made an impact at ServiceNow. Give us some suggestions on, we are at, we all represent several different companies, probably, who knows what, maybe 300 different companies by within our membership. How do we continue to make an impact? Because right now with the murder of George Floyd, along with, again, what happened during COVID and people who were in need and people who were distressed, yes, that puts the spotlight on that for a moment in time. However, at the end of the day, the fact is there's still incredible needs that existed way before any of those things happened, and they still exist right now. How do we continue to find ways to even the playing field?
Well, I think that's a challenging, right? It's so much happening in the world, whether Ukraine, whether what's going on and globally, right? Globally, America, like it's so much happening. So I think now everybody's kind of the world opened back up. So everybody like, hey, you don't really want negativity no more. Like everybody's trying to like, how do we? Because I mean, I'm not gonna lie to you. Like somebody who worked in the space, it's even hard for me to watch the news, right? Like because whether I turn to Fox, whether I turn to CNN, you're like, I just want some positive right now. So like. And then also we got white people on the call, white males. I talk to them a lot, and I feel bad for them too because they get a bad rap in this, right? Like when they think DEI, I talk to leaders and they like, man, Chris, I want to help, but every time I go, I feel like I'm getting attacked. And I tell them, I was like, it's not necessarily attack on you, right? Like, so let's take a step back. I think, but everybody painted with a broad stroke, like, hey, white men are entitled, they held me down, or this and that and third. And I don't think that's true. I think it's room and space for everybody. But how do we do that collectively? That's the challenging piece, because like I said, you cannot address or fix the DEI problem without white males at the table. I'm like everybody like, oh, how do we? I'm like, you need white male leaders at the table to address, not to attack them, but say, hey, these are pain points. Tell me how you feel, listening. But I think right now as a country, people just pick sides and dig their heels. There's no more going across the aisle, listening, sharing. I think that's the biggest gap right now in the country.
Gotcha. Yeah. Oh, and I completely understand. The fact is that so often our attention goes to whatever's in the media, and that becomes the spotlight for the moment. But when it comes to diversity, I think that with a big company, for example, for like ServiceNow, how do you keep your eye and keep the focus of yourself as well as your leaders on understanding how diversity helps the overall business? Not just morally does it feel better, but financially. Again, making sure that you can build products and services that can be extremely broad. It's hard to sit back. So for example, if I wanted to create something for women and said, oh, I know everything about, and no, I don't. So, how do you sit back and make them stay on the same page and make it where it stays a top item for discussion?
Yeah, I think really one thing I commend our leadership on, DEI is still relevant and serious at ServiceNow. I just think as far as the products and depending on what you're selling or what you're doing, depending on how you want to address it. But I do think, to your point, right, like having diverse thoughts and diverse mind really not only it just helped the company in so many ways, right? The culture of the company, the fabric, how we look at a problem. Because if you continue to hire the same people, you continue to look at the situation the same. So, so it definitely matters having diverse thoughts and minds, business purpose, tactics, and things of that nature.
Gotcha. So now being a Black man who was an athlete, again, is always an athlete by far, in a company that is so large, for example, how many employees does ServiceNow have?
Right now, we just under 23,000 employee globally. So like, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And so now with that in mind, I assume that, again, I don't know what what the actual percentage of Black men and women are of that 23,000. But when you're walking into a room and, the majority of the room does not look like you, again, any advice that you can give to people, just as far goes their comfort level. Because something, I'm trying to address things of where people might be based on some of the surveys that we took. But, any advice you can give there?
Yeah, I don't know. I know I use this word, the black tax, right? Like part of the black tax is you're gonna have to be uncomfortable, okay with being uncomfortable, right? So as you go into these rooms, it may be one or two of y'all in these rooms, and that's okay. Of course, you want to try to increase that. So you got to always show up as the best version of yourself, even when you're having a bad day, even when the wife is yelling at you, even when something just be going on, or family member sick, and like that's another thing I try to talk to our leaders about, right? Like for me, as the first person in my family to go to college and have a corporate job, like when one of my nephews or nieces do something great, they call me. Hey Chris, we need money for college. Hey Chris, we need money for this, right? Like we need, like I'm somebody in the family dies. Chris, we got a funeral. You got to pay for the funeral. What? So like this is the black tax that like, and some of my colleagues like, wow, Chris, I had no idea that was even a thing. And I was like, yeah, I'm like, your family, somebody died, the trust fund, like, hey, insurance policy. But unfortunately for us, and it's not to like throw black people or throw our race under the bus. It's just fundamentally we haven't been set up. So like I'm trying to systematically get my family in order while trying to navigate a system where I'm the first one in this space. So I need mentors that white, black, purple to kind of help me navigate, because I may not be as polished as I need to be, right? So like always continue to work on yourself, always try to be the best version of yourself. And I think right now that I tell people that's worked well for me is being authentic. I'm not somebody who will go in a meeting and everybody got their own company lingo, right? They be talking these big words like, oh, da da da, the priorities. I'm the person in the group that gonna say, help, raise my hand and say, could you bring that down? Because I'm just not tracking. I'm not following. And I found when I do that, it like take the air out the room, and everybody said, "Woo, thank you." I wasn't the only one, right? So like, I think it's like a superpower, but like kind of just, look, I know we all intelligent, we all smart, but like sometimes people tend to kind of go overboard with it. Like they just jargon you to death, and you like, you use 20 jargon, nobody's really tracking you, but it sounds good though. It sounds real good. Like then I'm the type of person I'm saying, what are the next steps? What do we need to do to be successful? How do we accomplish this? Because I'm like an executioner. You got some people who real good at Excel and PowerPoint. So I'm like, okay, how are we gonna execute this? How does is this 2023? Is this 2025? Like so, like I'm that kind of person in the room, and I think like by me being that person has helped us move the ball forward. But I understand a lot of people don't have that confidence to kind of say, I don't know. And I'm not afraid to say, I don't know. No matter the question, say, hey, that's a great question. Let me get back to you. And I'll ping the person offline and we'll have a conversation. They were like, man, and half of the time they tell me they don't know themselves. Chris, I don't know neither. Let's figure it out together. So that's the thing I appreciate, right? When you get to that space, when you get to figure it out together, it just made everything winning together, right? It's better for the company, better for the culture. So,
yeah, I love that. It sparkles the confidence as well as the boldness so often. And I mean, this is something that everybody can learn from, not just, of course, Black men and women, but just having that confidence in the room, regardless if the subject matter or not. Again, ask for it to be broken down so that you can catch up and get there as well. And because that you have something to offer. So understanding our self-worth and our self-value is extremely important. How much of that came to you, I guess, maybe just being an athlete? Where did it start? Where'd you get that value initially?
I mean, one, I'm one of those people, I'm a workaholic, right? Like I'm trying to like learn. Well, one of the focus areas I've been trying to focus on like how to delegate, right? As a leader, as an entrepreneur, I'm quite sure people on the call, you're great by yourself, but like how do you scale? Right. So that's one of the things I've been focused on, like how do I scale? How do I empower other people to do or be better than me when I'm not here, right? Like that's the mark of a great leader. So like really I've been pushing myself this year of skill and like how to delegate. And for me, when I was younger, I thought delegation was a bad thing, but as I'm growing in my career, delegation is the new thing that I'm trying to embrace to do more and impact more, right? Delegate and scale. So that's I don't know if I answered your question, but that's
Mhm.
what I'm thinking.
Oh yeah, no, without question. And so over the course of the last 3 years, and I think I asked you this question in a slightly different way earlier. Of course, we saw the explosion of a particular role in corporate America, which was the chief diversity officer. And for the first time, pretty much these chief diversity officers actually had a seat at the table. Now, 3 years later, because the spotlight is no longer on that particular subject matter, what do you see happening? What do you see in the future? Will chief diversity officers still exist in 3, 5 years from now? Um,
Ooh,
what's your
man,
take on that?
that's a loaded question. I would say right now you got companies who want to do the right thing, right? Um, the ones who want to do the right thing will continue to do it, but the ones who's kind of on the fence will kind of bow out due to even what happened to affirmative action and other things. So they will kind of fade away slowly but surely, like how you walk back. Um, so you will see in the next 3 to 4 years who really was serious about DEI. That would be my answer to you. The next 3 or 4 years, it'll tell you which company was really intentional and serious about DEI, and you'll be able to see it be evident because they'll still be championing it.
I completely agree. And I think a lot of people on this call would also shake their heads. Again, you kind of get a feel for who responded in the moment because again, the pressure was there. And then who actually keeps it going. It will tell the difference. But you know what? We've got 2 to 3 years to figure that out and we'll be able to see. But we kind of keep our eyes and ears open. Again, always applauding those who did something to make the world a little bit better of a place. So that means, I think, a lot. So that definitely help. Thank you for answering that question. Actually, at ServiceNow, do you guys actually have that particular position? Who is the big champion there?
Yeah, for us, they don't go by chief diversity; they go by chief equity officer, because they said they want to be equitable across the table and not diversity. So
Mhm.
our leader is 𝗂cie𝗰𝗶𝗹. So she's been here what 2 years, a little over 2 years now. So yeah.
Gotcha. And so I want you in the beginning, you had mentioned as far goes being a mentor. And as far goes being that to me means that having a heart for others. You've achieved a certain level of success, and now your goal here is to go back and pull other people up. Tell us a little bit about the 200, I think it was 200 people that you actually were mentoring. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think like when we started off, right, like anything, right? We never like me and a couple of my other teammates, we never started off to like mentor 200 people. It was kind of like, hey, let's start. I'm one of the people. Let's start what we have, right? Use what we have, and then being at University of Alabama platform and being in the state of Florida, football is like is one of the main products for Black people to get out of low income situations. So when we kicked off our program, we had tons of people signing up. Like I say, half of my teammates went to the NFL. So it's like, I mean, their celebrity, going back to their communities, enriching the young students, and like, because all of us got the same mission, right? Paying it forward. But my biggest thing was, I'm gonna say this is gonna make me sound like I'm selling out my athletes, but I'm not. When I talk to when an NFL player come talk to you, or NBA player come talk, they all say similar message. Well, you can do anything you put your mind to. God, all of that other stuff, right? And I don't really agree with that, right? Genetic plays a large part, right? Like I can want to be the best golfer in America, but I'm not. I can go out there and swing a club every day. if I'm not hitting a certain score, I'm not gonna make the the golf tournament like league, right? So that's why I think for me, athletics is genetics. It's half genetics and half skill and work ethic, right? So you can't help if your dad, mom 6'3", 6'4", and you 5'9", you're not gonna get a D1 scholarship, right? So I just think like some players don't see that side of it when they talk to young kids. But like I tell kids now, if I'd have taught you how to code, would have gave you the tools to understand how to create the next Facebook or how to create a API or how to do these things, you can go raise $20 million with your brain, with your idea, right? Like that's more doable than you make it to the NFL, NBA. But like nobody is talking about that in that way. And also in our culture, rap and sports is like pushed to the forefront, and movie star, being a comedian, right? Like, but I'm like, there's no Bill Gates that nobody pushing. There's no Steve Jobs, but like our students are capable and willing, but nobody's giving them the tools, right? And then also with the smartphone, with everything's out, everybody want to be an influencer, but that's like something that may be hot for a year or two, or they want to play Fortnite. And I'm like, bro, we gotta use some real tangible skills. So like when I come talk to students, I'm not in there trying to be their friends. And I tell their parents that, I tell their principal that. I like, hey, if you don't want them understanding real talk or real conversation, I'm not the one to talk to them. And by the way, I do have a master's degree. By the way, I do have all these boxes checked. But I think when you're talking to kids that's really need an opportunity, you got to meet them where they are. You just have to. Because that's nobody can come talk to me if they weren't talking real. Because I'm dealing with my mom working 2 jobs, my brother's in the game. I mean, like, I didn't have a choice to join a game when I was a young kid. It was based on my zip code. If I'm going to be in the game, protected me, allowed me to play the sport. So I go to corporate America. They say, well, gang members are bad. They are, but it depends. It depends on what side of the track you are. Because without the gang members, without my brother, I don't get a chance to even play football. So, but nobody can speak to it. They're going to tell you what they read in the books.
No, I can appreciate that. I mean, so often there's a narrative placed around situations and organizations and gangs, whatever the case is, and they are formed, in my belief, they're formed for a certain reason. Again, if it's protection, if it's, again, people just maybe they want somebody to be there for them. So again, each situation I'm sure is extremely unique. So I'm glad that you've been able to kind of navigate those waters to the best of your ability to, get your level of success and be able to continue to kind of, give back. So, so tell me, I mean, so right now, I think, I'm not sure if you mentioned, I saw the ring, married now?
Oh yes, been married. Oh, that's been a challenge, right? Like been married.
That's a whole nother hour.
Yeah. Been married for 6 years, and and there's so many things I had to work on, right? Like to be the best husband, to not be selfish, right? Because there's so many things, right? So going to counseling, yeah, man, it's a work in progress. So that's why, like, for me, I tell people I'm not perfect, and then when I mentor through the kids, I tell them I'm still working on making myself the best version of myself. So,
gotcha. And and that's extremely real. I'm sitting back, and I know that when you mentioned that you're University of Alabama, everybody knows Roll Tide, all that good stuff. I went to a much smaller school, and I sit back and I say to myself, I know that when you walked around Alabama, you were pretty much the beginning and the end. These athletes become like almost mini gods, by far. So, how do you take it where you go from being the top to kind of settling in with somewhat of the general population, or do you ever?
I think for me, I was lucky to have 2 great coaches. One, my high school coach, and then also Coach Saban, Coach Smart, right? And like Coach Saban got this theory that he always tell us, guys, you're only good as your last quarter and you're only as good as your last game, right? So don't get too high, don't get too up, right? Like right now, things could be going very well for me at ServiceNow. They can come in next quarter and say, hey, we're moving away from all this stuff, Chris. You got to exit left. So like I walk around with that in mind because I know it can change in a drop of a hat. So I know that's the way I approach everything. Like, and then also I kind of operate off the golden rule, right? Like I may not be able to get somebody opportunity at ServiceNow or interview or whatever the case may be, but I do think if you reach out to me, I'm going to try my best to respond. Like, hey, that role's not open, whatever the case may be, but I'm not going to just egg you and not like respond to you because, like I said, I can be fired next week. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I think a lot of people get these corporate jobs, they kind of start to like smell themselves or feel themselves a little bit.
Mhm.
And then, like I say, maybe part of me being an entrepreneur, I understand what it's like to be an entrepreneur. I know what it was like when I was trying to call somebody just to get some answers, just to get some guidance. And I always take that with me now, even though I'm in corporate now.
No, I love it. I mean, the fact you talk about not making your highs too high or your lows too low. Yes, being, again, the last quarter might have been your best. And again, that's what you'll be remembered by far. So again, and thank you for sharing with the marriage. Right now, we actually, a majority of us are within industry called, performance marketing, lead generation. So of course, we know about the ups and the downs. Again, our industry is going through something else right now. And I didn't have a chance to share that with you. But I think that this, what you're talking about gives us a little bit more of the resilience that we would need to operate, because guess what? There's always something new. I swear, like, there's always an issue that we're fighting through. Again, if it's in mortgage, if it's insurance, if it's compliance, Lord knows we are kind of going through it. So I appreciate, you coming out here today and talking to us a little bit about it. Kind of in closing, because I know I want to honor your next call. Just tell us a little bit about some of the, just maybe recap some of the key points that that you would say to anyone to, again, kind of keep them encouraged when things don't look encouraging.
I think for me, me and my friend was laughing, joking about this the other day, right? But like as an entrepreneur mindset, you always got to have 2-3 contingency plan, right? Like if this goes well, if this don't go well, you thinking you're 2-3 steps ahead. Like I need to close this deal, but this deal may not. Like I'll speak frank, right? Like you may got a big fish on the hook, but you got this other person that like, so you got to prioritize time, right? You like, so do I go all in here or do I split my time? And I think as an entrepreneur, you probably gonna do both. You're gonna figure out like, can I meet this person at golf? How do I take this person lunch? How do I not brown nose the EA, right? But like a lot of people don't realize just how valuable the EA is, right? Like the EA, she set the time in the book, so you gotta make sure she's very fond of you, right? Like so, I think those things matters. And then lastly, I would say, I know a lot of people spend a lot of time talking about certifications and all that other stuff. I would say you can run yourself raggedly trying to grab the latest, greatest certification. What I would kind of focus on, like, I mean, everybody talk about ChatGPT, the new AI tool. So you probably need to immerse yourself in something of it, generate AI, because not because you're trying to do it to keep a job. You're doing it so you can like streamline your skill set so you can be relevant. Like, so as all of us, we always got to reinvent ourselves. So like, this is not going nowhere. The ChatGPT, generate AI. So I would say, hey, if I'm an entrepreneur, I'm somebody, if I got some downtime, I'll say, well, I can spend 30 minutes or an hour a week on this. And then in a month, that's 4 hours, right? So like, I think like, not to overwhelm yourself on it, just like, hey, there's somebody to be working on. How do I spend 30 minutes or an hour a week on this to upskill myself? And before you know it, listen to NPR news or listen to some other podcasts or, some stuff that's going on around it while you walking or jogging. And that's kind of how I keep myself relevant. Just
Constantly learning.
Yeah.
Constantly learning by far. Well, again, it's almost time, but I wanted to sit back and I asked in the chat if anybody had any questions. And
Sean,
I think,
I do have one if
Yeah,
I can
yeah,
ask
yeah.
for it.
I stay a little longer. It's okay. Go ahead. I stay a little longer.
Matt.
Yeah, so I think one of the key things that key takeaways that I'm hearing is, obviously we all are very aware of DEI, right? We know what it is, we know its importance. But I think still a question that everyone has is the how, right? I know one of the things you mentioned was your relationships with an HBCU, how you've created scholarships and done things like that. Can you just help us understand, like, how do you get in front of the HBCUs? How do you create value? And obviously, I think we all know how to sell ourselves and our companies, but the question just is, how do we get in front of them in order to make this next step?
Ooh, I think realistically, right? Like you gotta go to the right HBCU, and that's no shot at any HBCUs out there, right? HBCUs went from they had maybe 5 to 10 companies on their campuses to after George Floyd died, it was 100 calling. And then they only had the 2-3 people that been there for 10, 15 years. So the resources weren't there to fill all the asks and requests that was coming in. I think now things are starting to cool off. They're starting to kind of level set. So if you want to get in there, you can. And then I think realistically, and I tell people, you don't necessarily need a whole lot of money to do it, right? Like, because what they need more than anything, and what I'm finding out is not money. They got enough money from the government and from corporations. What they need now is opportunity for their students. So like you may be able to come to them and say, you may be a local business, wherever you may be in Delaware State and say, hey, Delaware State, I want to start an apprentice program with your students here. I want to take 2 of them. I can't pay them $25 an hour, but I can give them $10 an hour and I can get them some real skill set that they can need in the business world, right? Any dean of the school, dean of the business school, like they're gonna take that opportunity because they got too much money, but they don't have enough jobs and resources to get their kids opportunity. So they're gonna want that more than anything. So, or you say, hey, I'm willing to give you once a quarter 2 hours of my time to look at, have me and my colleagues come and prep your students on resumes, right? Like what the industry really needs, or give them mock interviews so they can be successful in landing a job or opportunity. So I just think like you just got to find your threshold and what your skill set is, a superpower is that you want to give, and give that to them. You know what I'm saying? Like that's what I would say. Whatever your superpower is.
Great. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And Matt, to that point, we've talked about the fact of, again, performance marketing, where there are not a lot of people of color within the overall industry. And I think it's because one reason why is that I think a lot of people don't even know that it exists. It's kind of like you back into this bad boy, and then before you know it, you're like, oh, how did I get here?
Well, Sean, if you remember early on, and I'm saying this because Matt Conlon happens to be on the call here, but Fluent created the Business Empowerment Initiative, which is when they went out and provided $50,000 to entrepreneurs to be able to go out and advertise their products. And so, that was great then. Those efforts have kind of slowed down now, but we still need to look at ways of building that back up. And that's why I say, I think we're at a point now, we're at an impasse. It's the how, right? Yep. We know what we need to do, but how do we get there? How do we do it? So Chris, I definitely appreciate that feedback, because I think that there are subtle things that we can do that allows us to get there, where we don't have to necessarily be there, providing millions of dollars of support of any way, but it's really about what we know and how do we impart what we know on these individuals at these schools in order to prepare them for industries like ours.
And I want to double click on something, right? Like sometimes when we come in, I come into space and I think I know a lot, but I end up learning from these kids, right? Like they end up teaching me, like I'm like, so like even white, black, purple, right? Cross any cutter line. These students are super intelligent, but then at the same time, no matter what color, because of COVID, they all lacking soft skills. So like, so I tell people that's gonna be the greatest like divide right now. If a kid that got soft skills versus a kid that don't have soft skills, you're gonna be able to pick up on it and be like, no. So like imparting that on a student, I think will go a long way as well. So like you just reach one, teach one mentality, right? And I know people like to say, oh, I want to do 100, I want to do 200, but realistically, you know, that one or two kid, you know, who he or she may be, you know, that's the gift that like lights me up. Like I got students that I talk to that didn't even get an internship at ServiceNow, but they go on to Microsoft or Google, or Apple, or wherever they may go. Or some of them may start their own business. I just get excited about that as well because, you know, that's the most rewarding thing when they do it on their own.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions out there? I see Terrence put something out here. He's trying to figure out how you develop that that talent pipeline like Saban. I think that guy, I don't know how he does what he does. If you have any secrets to that.
Yeah, I think he's last of dying breed, right? Like the way the world is now, helicopter parents. I get on my wife now. You know, like the day of coaching hard. It's only like a couple of people gonna be able to do that. And after he retired, maybe gonna be maybe 2-3 other coaches. But the world we live in is totally different now. It's like you can't do the things that he's been able to do. So it's just. I hate to say it that way. When he dies over with, everybody gonna be soft.
I've heard the comments like that before as well.
But how do we buck that trend as a society? That's my big question, because it seems to me we've gotten soft because of the pandemic. To your point, there was a whole generation that got lost. They don't know how to communicate properly, and we're helping them. You got a lot of people that are really, really comfortable and we're getting softer by the moment, except for nations that are in duress, like, you know, Israel. They're ready for war at all times, right? Without that pressure of war, how do we buck that trend? Because I totally agree with you that we're becoming more and more soft by the day.
Yeah. Oh man, it's I mean, I ain't gonna say policies and procedures that's been implicated. You really can't do much about it, right? Without losing your job, without retaliation. So it's kind of like you kind of gotta go along to get along. You don't. That's why I say Coach Saban's the last dying breed, because like after he died, they go right into the rule books. You can't do that no more, right? So it's just, yeah.
Well, the question wasn't really Saban related. It was like taking that sort of pipeline and then being analogous to everything that we do. So as we talk about developing younger people, having boots on the ground, meaning people that are going to be in between the end product, end state you, and the talent, and those people need to stay. You know, they have to be there year after year after year after year. First, identifying who those key people are. We all say, oh, hey, HBCUs, we always say this here. Look, these people have a full-time job. There's something else that happens or needs to happen. It used to be family and parents. That's gone. It used to be, you know, when you played youth sports, there was someone there. That's gone through AAU. You know, it's been professionalized. We have to have a replacement of somebody that is in between youth and, you know, adults, and even with young adults, even with adults, that is consistently there. Otherwise, you know, to, you know, Matt's point, we have too much comfort, you know, and not enough accountability, you know, to actually then make that happen. So I just want to know, like, how Saban did it, and maybe we can replicate it of getting that.
Those people are retiring, right? They're retiring. Like it's like I said, that's why it's hard for him to continue to win right now, because the way of doing it is changing. The guard is changing. But to your point, that's relevant, right? Like everything you say, I agree with it wholeheartedly. I just don't have the answer for it. Yeah,
you
spot on. You spot on with it, though. You spot on.
And to that point, as well as, again, you know, what even Matt was mentioning earlier, the fact, you know, what do we do to change that? You know, that we see that the wave is going this way. What do you do to change that wave? What do you do to change the current? It's not easy to change the current by far. I mean, I don't care how much you go in there and splash around, the current is still going to come. But you talk about something almost like a massive movement, or what could we do within our own circles to at least change, you know, where things are going, so that more of us are tougher and not as soft. Again, I'll tell you right, again, that's something I have conversations with friends all the time about how we are just losing it. I mean, culturally. But now I sit back and if I looked at all the people here on this phone call right now and the backstories, learning the backstories of individuals is extremely important. And today, Chris, you had a chance to tell us about your backstory. I've had a chance, I think I've spoken to several people on the call, and I know about some of their things that made them tougher. Because life, you know, I don't think anybody here was really born with a silver spoon in their mouth, and everybody kind of made their way through. Again, so because of that backstory, they got tougher. Because if not, it was, you know, failure was not an option. It was time. But you know what? But there's so many who choose to sit back and say, hey, you got to give it to me. One of the questions that we asked in our survey that we took a couple of weeks ago was the fact of, you know, who carries the weight of helping people succeed. So, for example, with a lot of the young Black children, is it the Black male and female that have succeeded? Is it all solely on them to kind of guide the way? Something else. Earl, thank you.
Yes, man, that's another. We'll be here all day talking about that. I mean, it's challenging because I tell people you don't know what you don't know what you don't know, right? Like I think it's so hard to put the onus on a on a parent who make $25,000 a year less. They don't know, right? They just trying to get by, scrape by. But you got to be fortunate to have somebody pull you in. And lucky for me, I've been fortunate, and I tell people this, right? Like I've been fortunate to have Republicans pull me in, foot soldiers who march pull me in, who educate me, who showed me the way. But I would be doing everybody a disservice if I didn't share what was been bestowed upon me, right? So it's challenging, right? It's so many loopholes, and then just to make it, right? Like how you make it out of that environment without going to jail, without getting shot. Education system, is what it is. Like Title I schools. How do you, like, it just, the odds are stacked against you. So you don't look at it as a total failure, but you need a break. You need a break. You need somebody to see something in you. And I tell people the best way for some people to see something in you, you got to volunteer. You got to get involved. Like you got to, and this is one thing I'm gonna share with y'all that I think is irrelevant. Who saw the movie Slumdog Millionaire? I don't know if anybody on the call saw the movie Slumdog Millionaire. It's one of like probably my top 3, top 5 movies of all times, because I feel like it kind of depicts Chris Rogers' life. Like, they in India, but like growing up in America, like every story, everything happened, like good, bad, and different. It comes back and help me 5-10 years down the road. Like, I don't even know what it means, but it'd be a moment that I remember some stuff from. But also I tell people, I just volunteer. So like, say I'm talking to you today, Sean, you say, hey, Chris, I just met you 2 weeks ago. You say, hey, Chris, I got this event. I really think you should come. I may not even have time to show up, but you offered, I show up. I show up to this event, volunteering or whatever it may be. I end up meeting, I don't know, I'm just gonna pick somebody. I end up meeting Michael and Matt on the call, Amanda. And from that event, they tell me, oh my God, Chris, we're so impressed with you. We want to offer you a job. Now, if I say no to you just because whatever, and I don't show up, I miss the opportunity, right? So I tell people sometimes you never know what opportunity is knocking on the door. You just gotta be ready at all times. Go, show up, be the best version of yourself. And who knows what happened? Like, that's literally how I live my life. I know it's not like the 5-year plan, 10-year plan, like everybody wants you to have, but like literally that's how it like led me to where I'm at today.